Most of us, we grow up with the idea of good and evil. Maybe it's something our parents teach us, or maybe it's something innate. Most, if not all, of the stories revolve around the battle between good and evil, and we all, well, most of us anyway, root for the good to triumph over evil. The reason why I bring this up is because some very bad people who are posing as journalists and media personalities are painting certain groups, certain people, certain religions in a very bad light. I don't know why they would do this. Usually it comes down to greed. No, I'm not here to tell you who the good or the bad guys are. Instead, I'm going to lay out some facts about what is actually happening in Palestine, and then I will urge you to decide for yourself. Before we get to it, indulge me for a second. Imagine you live in this nice little house. It's in a nice neighborhood. It's no mansion, but it's your home, so you love it. And then one day, some people barge into your house and take over the upper floor. Now, you don't know what to do because they are armed to the teeth. And before you know it, you find yourself locked up in the basement or the attic, and you can't even go to your own kitchen or your living room anymore. And every time you try to resist, they overpower you and they call you a terrorist. The worst thing is, now the whole neighborhood started calling you a terrorist. Will that make you break? Will that make you forego peaceful negotiations with those people? What if they start killing your loved ones? Will that make you break? This is what's happening in Palestine. There's a lot of coverage on the media about 100 days of conflict and 100 days of war, but the truth is it's been more like 100,000 days for Palestinians, who are at the end of the day human beings, just like you and I.
We went to another room, hiding from the soldiers. They started banging on the door, and then they blew it up. They were interrogating us, asking us to show them the tunnels.
Disabled nephew. They say Moomin cries all night. They don't know how to make him happy.
If you think they're not, that is the media at work. That is those celebrities who get paid, filling your head with poison and lies. Just over the last 4 or 5 months, about 40,000 innocent civilians, men, women, children, mothers, have been massacred.
Gaza is now in ruins following Israel's onslaught since October 7th, with right-wing Israeli leaders promising to turn it into a new Jewish settlement. That means the Palestine accepted as Arab land by the United Nations in 1947 has been reduced to dots of green in an increasing sea of blue Israeli occupation.
Now you may be thinking that, it's Hamas. Hamas is a ragtag bunch who have been brought up in an open-air prison. They grow up knowing nothing of independence or freedom or the good things that this world has to offer. Instead, what they grow up knowing is food insecurity, constant bombardment, IDF punks and bullies traipsing into their homes anytime they want, killing their loved ones. Every single resident of Gaza has a story like this.
There are up to 750,000 Israeli settlers living in about 250 settlements in violation of international law. They openly carry weapons, often intimidating, attacking, and harassing Palestinians to displace them from their land. Children in the occupied West Bank are also targeted. Israel is the only country in the world to prosecute children in military courts.
And also, IDF is one of the most well-equipped, well-funded, well-trained military in the world. Every year, Israel gets unlimited amounts of funding and technological equipment and weaponry because Israel has a right to defend itself. Of course, who says you don't? Every country has a right to defend itself, including Palestine.
This is an Israeli checkpoint in the occupied West Bank. A sign of Israel's military control over the territory since 1967. More than 3 million Palestinians here face about 700 different obstacles to their freedom of movement, including checkpoints, roadblocks, and gates.
There's no other way to call it but apartheid. It's not only a human rights organization. I mean, anyone who looks at the situation on the ground knows it is apartheid.
Rights organizations say Palestinians are denied basic civil rights, including that of freedom of assembly, association, and expression.
This is a good place to stop and tell you that when I talk about Israel, I'm talking about these corrupt government officials, these bad people, the normal people of anywhere in the world. We just want to get on with our lives. We don't wake up thinking about hurting someone. It's these corrupt politicians. They have to protect their power and their control. There is no comparison between IDF and Hamas. The residents of Gaza, the Palestinians living in Gaza, they can't leave. Their friends or their loved ones can't visit them without the permission of IDF. That's number one. Not just friends and visitors. Right now, humanitarian aid is finding it impossible to get into Gaza.
Humanitarian aid in Gaza continues to face nearly insurmountable challenges. Intense bombardment, restrictions on movement, fuel shortage, and interrupted communications make it impossible for WHO and our partners to reach those in need. We have the supplies, the teams, and the plans in place. What we don't have is access. WHO has had to cancel 6 planned missions to northern Gaza since the 26th of December.
So how did Hamas become so powerful all of a sudden to walk into Israel on the 7th of October last year and just kill hundreds of people? I mean, what else does IDF need? Do they need flying cars and teleportation devices to finally eliminate Hamas?
Quite clear that on October 7th, a good number, we don't know what the number is, but a good number of the Israelis who were killed were not killed by Hamas, they were killed by the IDF. And I find that hardly surprising, given the nature of the fight that was taking place. It is hard to discriminate in those situations. Now, the Hannibal Doctrine is a very different matter. The argument there is that what the Israelis do is that if it looks like an Israeli soldier or even an Israeli citizen is going to be captured by Hamas or some other terrorist group, to use the Israelis' language to describe those groups, then the IDF will kill those Israelis so that they don't become hostages. And there is a great deal of evidence that there is this Hannibal Doctrine in practice inside of Israel. That's murder. I guess you could call it that.
You know, when Hamas came into power, through a democratic process, by the way, one of their biggest supporters was Benjamin Netanyahu.
Likud and Netanyahu were in the business of diminishing the authority of the PLO, and they have been for decades supporting Hamas financially, politically, militarily.
This is all the work of a corrupt politician who knows his career is on its last leg, but he cannot let it go. There is no length to which he will not go to ensure that. He will do anything, even if it means killing children, women, old people, innocent people. This is genocide, and this is happening right in front of our eyes. And it's mostly funded by the tax money they collect from us. That makes us complicit. If there is one thing you do not want to be involved in, wittingly or unknowingly, it's genocide. It's killing of your own kind.
The war-torn territory is, quote, poised to witness an explosion in preventable child deaths, which would compound the already unbearable level of child deaths, unquote. On Monday, Palestinians rushed to get sacks of flour from a UN distribution center in Gaza City. This is a displaced Palestinian named Abdullah Sawaf.
Because we want to eat. We are dying of hunger. Why would someone put themselves at risk of dying by coming here? It is in order to feed the children. We are dying of hunger and there is no food or drink left in Gaza. There is a famine.
Meanwhile, Israeli forces reportedly opened fire again at crowds waiting for humanitarian.
This is not a righteous war. This is not about fulfilling prophecies. This is a corrupt, very evil group of politicians who are killing innocents left, right, and center, and then lying to you about it. How many of Israel's lies have been caught just in the past 4 months? They've been in Gaza for 5 months, and tell me, have you seen any tunnels? Where are the tunnels? If there was ever an incident where Hamas was using civilians as shields, do you not think the mainstream media would have been all over it? Does a single image like that come to your mind?
Chaos of war, misinformation has even been bolstered by journalists, media outlets, and politicians. Here are some rumors about the conflict that have been disproven. On October 10th, reports that Hamas fighters had killed and beheaded 40 babies were shared by an Israeli journalist from the I-24 news agency.
Babies. Their heads cut off. That's what they said.
The reports were promoted to millions of people on X by prominent figures and journalists, including American commentator Ben Shapiro and Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling. Hours later, the Israeli army confirmed to multiple news agencies, including Anadolu Agency and Sky News, that they had no information regarding 40 dead infants in the kibbutz of Kfar Aza. Despite no verified evidence of these killings, leading news agencies in the UK and US published front-page articles on the alleged massacre. Even US President Joe Biden.
I never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children.
But the White House immediately contradicted these reports, stating that no such images had been seen at the meeting.
Gaza is one of the most densely populated areas in the world. The yield of the bombs that they have dropped in Gaza in the last 4 months surpasses World War II. Does that sound like a good guy? I don't know about you guys, but all I remember is that good guys will never ever hurt innocents. No matter the challenge, no matter the conditions, they will never compromise.
The IDF has been forced to admit that they have been running a propaganda channel on Telegram aimed at Israeli citizens that featured snuff films of Palestinians being murdered, dehumanized as insects and vermin, their bodies desecrated, and the destruction of Gaza glorified.
Simple. They just want to kick all of the Gazans out of their homes.
Israeli Minister of Finance, meanwhile, Bezalel Smotrich, says Israelis will live in Gaza. He told Israel's Army Radio, "We must encourage the residents of Gaza to emigrate as they live in hardship and poverty." The Israelis want to return to Gaza because it's a beautiful place and they will turn the desert into a prosperous place.
They have destroyed all the hospitals. Doctors who have been working in Gaza, international doctors, have come back and told the most harrowing stories your heart could ever bear.
Since October the 7th, we have been forced to evacuate 9 different health facilities. Our patients have catastrophic injuries, amputations, crushed limbs, and severe burns. Medics cannot treat these injuries on a battlefield or in the ashes of destroyed hospitals. There are not enough hospital beds, there are not enough medications, and not enough supplies. Surgeons have had no choice but to carry out amputations without anesthesia on children. Our surgeons are running out of basic gauze to stop their patients from bleeding. They use it once, squeeze out the blood, wash it, sterilize it, and reuse it for the next patient. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza has left pregnant women without medical care for months. Women in labor cannot reach functional delivery rooms. They are giving birth in plastic tents and public buildings. Medical teams have added a new acronym to their vocabulary, WCNSF, Wounded Child, No Surviving Family. Children who do survive this war will not only bear the visible wounds of traumatic injuries, but the invisible ones too. Those of repeated displacement, constant fear, and witnessing family members literally dismembered before their eyes. These psychological injuries have led children as young as 5 to tell us that they would prefer to die.
This is not a war. This is certainly not righteous. This is genocide. They have already started advertising the real estate in Gaza. If you find any of this even a little bit compelling, raise your voices. Do not let this genocide happen. Not on our watch. May God have mercy on all of us.